this is Whitney Hall. So I'm going to do my presentation about my conflict management style of being collaborating and talk about a current situation that I was in at work with one of my preschoolers and their family. So my management style that came back after taking this assessment is that I am primarily collaborating. That was my highest scoring category. My second highest scoring was accommodating. And I think that as far as work is concerned, I would say I'm about 90% of the time at work. I am in collaborating mode as far as management style. Sometimes with my family, now the more I've read about it, I think I probably lean much more towards accommodating sometimes with my family, especially my parents and grandparents, that sort of relationship. But I also do still try to fall under collaborating as much as I possibly can, especially with siblings. But I would think that my default is my fallback is definitely the accommodating style. But for this situation, for this presentation, I'm going to talk about how I used a collaborating style in a conflict with a parent and child and teacher situation. So just a little bit about myself and how it relates to my management style. I am highly relational. I do value all the relationships that I have, both friendships and family alike. I'm also very goal oriented, so I enjoy seeing resolution and I like the feeling of progress and growth, both within myself and other people. And tension does cause me a tremendous amount of anxiety. I do not like to see other people in tension with one another or with myself, especially, and I generally can sense tension pretty quickly. So, this situation that I'm going to do the presentation on this year, I had a child that was in a classroom of about 8 kiddos, and a new teacher to our program. She's experienced, but she's new to us. So, new to me as far as communication is concerned. And so, she and I got to work a lot on the front end talking about communicating to the parents about his repeated bad behavior. And then she and I implemented some new things that we did in the classroom. And then ultimately, when we knew we would have to have a parent conference, we were able to communicate to them the things that we had tried in the classroom, the ways that we had communicated with them in the past. And then ultimately, we came up with some new solutions that collaborated both with the parents and the teacher and myself. But then ultimately, they were given a time frame that if his behavior hadn't changed by a certain day, he would be removed from our program. So this started a 2-week time frame where we really heavily communicated about his behavior in the classroom and then also tried some new things at the parents' requests, and then ultimately they ended up making the decision at the end of those 2 weeks to pull him from the program, which was nice because I didn't end up having to make that decision and force that decision. They came to it on their own accord. So this conflict actually, I think, was a good one. It was a sensitive topic in that it's a parent with their child and somebody is critiquing or could be viewed as criticizing their child's behavior. So it could have become a really defensive, closed off situation and combative, possibly. And it forced the parents to start communicating about other needs that their child may have. They voiced in our conference together that the child may have some sensory needs, possibly some hearing needs that need to be addressed. So that got them communicating, which is always a positive. But it also helped my new teacher learn how to communicate with me, which can be intimidating if you've never worked for a director and you're asking for help on communication with parents. But it also gave her some really good experience in communicating with parents about hard topics. It was also continued education for me on dealing with different parenting styles, dealing with a new teacher, and always how my students' needs are always changing. Like I said a while ago, ultimately it ended up being a decision where the parents removed their child on their own accord, so I did not have to confront them with a hard choice of removing their child, so it was much less confrontational, which is what I was praying for and hoping for. And I think that when they ultimately made that decision, I think that created a different level of satisfaction in them rather than if I had to remove him from the situation. Like I said at the beginning of the presentation, I tend to more often use the collaborating style when I am in conflict with people, and I do also try to use this style with my family. I think, like I said, my fallback is probably accommodating when I'm working with family relationships, and I think the major difference is in my work environment. I do work with friends, but I'm also dealing constantly with teachers who may not stay in my life forever, and parents who definitely won't stay in our lives forever, and children who won't either, just because of the nature of the program. So those relationships are less personal for me. I think when I go to my fallback method, it's because those relationships are very personal to me, and I want to make sure that those relationships are always salvaged and considered and can withstand a long haul. So, in this actual situation, this conflict situation, as far as my reactions and behavior were concerned, this was not a situation that got me stressed out. It didn't um, elevate my blood pressure. I didn't have fear or anxiety, and I have been in those situations as far as conflict and management goes, especially with hiring and firing. Those tend to elicit more of a physical response from me and get my blood pressure up and make me really nervous. This did not. I have a lot of comfort talking to parents. I'm really comfortable doing so. I'm pretty confident in my words with parents and students, and especially with teachers. So I think I reacted really well to this situation. And I honestly don't think that this situation could have been handled any more constructively than it was. I was really proud of my teacher for communicating often about the child's behavior. She sought my input often and started communicating with this family really early on in our school year. So I think her early and consistent communication with them helped. I appreciate that she asked for my input. We had a lot of good things to present to the family. It did not blindside them when we did get to a conference point. This actually is a pretty ideal situation as far as outcomes are concerned. So I'm actually pretty proud of the way that this conflict actually ended up coming out. It has not always worked this way. Parents and children are always different. Everybody has different personalities that they bring to the table, and teachers too. I sometimes have a harder time communicating with certain teachers and how they communicate with families. So, all in all, I think this was a wonderful experience for everyone.